Okay, AAC implementation. This session is called AAC implementation, and we're lucky to have Mr. Justin Sims providing training on AAC implementation. Justin's the Assistive Technology Regional Specialist, and he services the central region of the state out of his office in Alexandria. He's got tons of experience in the field of assistive technology. He's extremely knowledgeable in AAC, and Justin has a specialization, so he knows more about alternative access, so switch access, eye gaze, and things like that. He's very knowledgeable in that area. And so, with that, I will do a brief poll so that Justin has an idea of who's on the session. And I will also turn over the show to Mr. Justin Sims for AAC implementation.
Thank you very much, Josh. You can hear me clearly? Everything's happened good?
Yes.
All right. Make one more adjustment. Make sure I share with my computer audio. All right, guys, I'm going to get started. Again, thank you for joining us today. I'm Justin Sims, and we're starting off with a very accurate depiction of implementing AAC as a team. It is quite a feat. It takes a whole lot of training for everybody on the team, for the paraprofessional, for the parent, for the speech teacher, for Miss Susie that teaches first hour, for Mr. Jacob that teaches second hour. Everybody needs to be on board for AAC to be successful for that kid. Everyone needs to know how to model. They need to know how to repair communication. It's quite a challenge, and everyone should know at the very beginning what's expected of them. And my approach today is not just to give you a presentation as an individual, but I'm assuming that you're part of an AAC team. And I want to make sure that in your team, working with whatever client, whatever student or friend you have the resources to share with everybody else. And one of the best things to start with implementing AAC is being preemptive. You need to make sure that yourself and other people on your team for that kid to implement AAC is aware about the misconceptions, some of the misinformation, some of the myths about AAC that we'll talk about. So I'll show you some resources and some ways to convince people otherwise. You need to make sure that core vocabulary at the very beginning, it's very clear that that's going to help that child in every possible scenario. We need to talk about the grid size for the very beginning. We have to talk about symbol sets. And then we really get into the meat of things. We need really good examples of how modeling takes place, aided language simulation. We need to talk about how we're going to train communication partners. We need to talk about engineering the environment. And lastly, we need to talk about just managing these devices so they don't just get out of hand and things turn up missing, and how to measure progress long term. And before the team even gets together to hand a device to a child, everyone has to be on the same page that AAC promotes speech instead of inhibits it, that it can impact children regardless of age. 3 years or younger, kids can use AAC to communicate, and they do. And really, there's virtually no prerequisite skills required to be using a high-tech AAC device. And I have some information to share with you. First, a few years ago, I went through the trouble of making a 4-page annotated bibliography, researching scholarly articles about this, how AAC promotes speech in young children before they reach school age, how kids can even use a switch at a very, very, very early age, that you don't have to start with paper before you get to a high-tech device. And maybe that's not good enough for you. You know, maybe you're thinking, man, that dude, he sure sounds handsome, but I don't know if I believe everything he says. That's all right. Because ASHA, had to deal with so many myths and misconceptions about AAC, they've dedicated an entire spot of their webpage now. And that's one reason I haven't updated my annotated bibliography in the last 3 years, because now they have a section where they list a myth. It's going to right here, um, prevent natural speech. Well, here's some research findings and citations that will let you know that's not the case, right? It doesn't matter how old they are. You can still start implementing AAC because it's about modeling that language, as we'll talk about. There's no prerequisite skills, and it goes on and on. It's a really great resource. And let's say you need something a little simpler to show people. Maybe that's too many words, it's too much vocabulary, right? Well, something I like to share with parents is 10 things you may not know about AAC. So it breaks it down on a much more digestible level, something that you can share and read over yourself. Right here, excellent point. It can actually reduce the frequency of severe challenging behaviors because now they have a way to express their wants and needs, right? Or spontaneously give us utterance about something that's not in that room that they wanted. Another thing that we're going to do throughout today is show video examples. Some people, you could shake the science stick at them all you want and show them all the research in the world, but some people on your team may have been, let's say, doing their job for years and never had to use AAC, or even more frighteningly, and this comes up a lot, they may have used AAC, but in the last 20 years, it's never been successful. So it's really good to use a video I show you today, or just pop on YouTube and type AAC and look for some videos of kids using it. You'll see 3-year-olds use AAC. We'll see some today use AAC. And perhaps the most profound thing you can do to really remove some of these barriers and these misconceptions are recording own students from your agency. It takes some permission, I know, but it's very profound when you say, hey, this has worked in this school with these teachers and these people that they may know and recognize and say, hey, we want to do the same thing here in this school, in this classroom. Or down the hallway, you remember little Timmy? Well, we had a rough start with his device, but look at him now. Look how much he's grown from this first video to the second video to this third video. So even if they're not much into the information, into the science, that has a profound effect on getting people to buy into AAC. And in fact, that's my go-to. And we'll see some videos here shortly as well, because it's the best way to demonstrate modeling. And what we'll jump into next, which are essential for our beliefs for AAC, is core vocabulary and making these very, very rich learning environments for AAC, making them being submerged in modeling and language to learn these devices. I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time on core vocabulary because we have a lot to go through, but we're so lucky that experts over the years have thought if a kid has only 8 spaces for vocabulary words on a device, if a kid only has 84 spaces of vocabulary, what's going to be the words we use? What words are going to give us the most benefit for conveying wants, needs, requesting information? What words are going to get us places the most? And it's core vocabulary. It's pronouns, it's verbs, it's prepositions, and some adjectives too. It's these words that help us give information and to receive it and have a clear understanding. And to show you some examples, and please use this presentation. I have tons of links here for you. This is dynamic learning maps. This is the first 40 core. So there's 200 really main core vocabulary words that people like to focus on, but here's the first 40. And you see, it doesn't take long to realize they synergize. I can say want. I could say not want. I could say I not want that. I want this. So you can go from 1-word phrase with core, 2-word, 3-word, 5 words plus, and have a whole lot of meaning there and understand what that kid is talking about. Just having the words pizza, pig, Some may even say mom and dad wouldn't be very useful, at least not on the first page. Maybe it's not first page material for a device, right? We need the words that's going to work in every situation, like she. You can talk about your mom while saying she, given the right context. Um, you can talk about your dad or your teacher with he. If you're talking to somebody, you could say you. So pronouns, very powerful. Verbs are very powerful because they are used 80% of the time to give information. And I have a good 400 one if you want to check that out, also by Digital Learning Maps. So 400 core vocabulary words. I recommend looking at the top 40 because those are the ones you may want to target first. But here's a list of 400. And hopefully you guys can hear this video. But I like to play this every time I present on core vocabulary. If you can't hear the video, just type in the chat and I'll just tell you what they're talking about.
Hi.
This is the power of core vocabulary.
Wait.
You should be able to hear feedback and button presses.
More. I wait more.
Well, John, you've told me quite a story. Why don't you hit speak display so everybody can hear the whole story? Thank you.
It was time to eat. I wait and wait. No one there. No one comes. I afraid no one here will help me eat. I wait more. He come and say to me you don't tell. He bad and mean. He go away. I wait more.
Well, I'm glad you could tell me about it. Is there something you need me to do to fix it? You can take care of it yourself. Excellent.
Like I told you, videos can be very, very profound. And the first time I saw that, it had a profound impact on me. Core vocabulary gave him a voice. You know, if he had a device that just said, you know, bathroom, water, pizza, hamburger, he couldn't convey meaning in real life, right? Those things may show communicational intent when they press it, but it's not going to show language, their true intentions, right? That's why we got to use core vocabulary. There's some great tools out there to help train the rest of your team or to share. One great tool, and I'll talk about 3 big ones today in different parts of this presentation, is Project Core. We have done entire presentations on Project Core before, but they give you modules online that you can take by yourself or you can redeliver, you know, as a team. And they really promote a lot of discussion. And I got a few examples here and I'll show you the website as well. So if I clicked on Core versus Fringe here, this is very interesting to get the ball rolling. You go through and you mark down what is useful in a wide range of places and what is very restrictive. And it really hammers home the idea of, yeah, you know what, saying teacher really isn't very common throughout the day. You may say it maybe 1 or 2 times, but you could be saying her a whole lot more, right? Only once I had someone argue that pig was very common and should be on the board. Only once. Most of the people, they kind of get the idea about vocabulary, core vocabulary, when they start using the continuum of usefulness activities they have on Project Core. That's just a sample. They also have some areas. Here's a sample module right here about using core vocabulary. And here is one of their activities where you're thinking about different things that you could say when that kid's arriving at school. And it takes some practice because your device may not have hello, good morning, welcome to school, because you're only going to say, you know, good morning in the morning. But you could say, what's up? You could say, I see you. It's good, I see you. there's different things you can do to promote that language. And right here is the full learning module page. If you want to get some information to share with your team or to practice yourself. And we'll be discussing these things throughout today, but an overview about the project, using core vocabulary, a lot of modeling, part 1 and part 2. Supporting individuals to access the universal core. That's a whole other topic we're going through today, but access, very, very important. And that next leads us into, with this core vocabulary, they need to be just submerged in it, like this young lady swimming in this water repeatedly. And that's kind of what happens when we learn language. By the time we're a year and a half to 6 years old, we learn up to 13 words per day. By 2 years before school, we know about 200 vocabulary words. 5, which kindergarten, into preschool, that's 3,000 words. That's a whole lot. And they're learning this through just hearing vocabulary around them and observing natural consequences in the environment. And that's kind of hard for some people to understand, because what we remember is just learning vocabulary in school. They gave us a vocabulary test, they showed us some sight words, and we got it. But with someone with an AAC device, they're starting from this beginning. They may learn faster than what person will with just having a voice in 2 years and listening to their device. But they're going to start at the very beginning, and they have to be taught that way. They have to be constantly reminded of the words they have and see it modeled in context to learn, because that's how people learn language at those very beginning ages. It's all around them. It's not just taking a vocabulary quiz. And I don't know if you were there for Katie's presentation earlier, but she shared similar information right here. Typical speaking kid happens around 18 months, right? But it took 4,380 waking hours of being around language and people using it before they started to communicate back. And if someone was to take a symbol set, an AAC device, and only did it for, let's say, 20 minutes, twice in a speech room, well, it would take about 84 years for them to become proficient with it. That can't happen. It has to be an all the time kind of thing. Everybody on that tightrope needs to be on the same page to make it successful. Now, and one thing that needs to be addressed at the very beginning, and that comes with how much vocabulary we're going to give that kid. And in some conversations, it's what's the grid size to be if it's a high-tech device. Well, I'm going to tell you what it is. In most cases, it's starting out with a grid size of 64 to 84 words on that first page and access to at least hundreds of subsequent words. And even some professionals like Linda Burkhart will look you in the eye and tell you that it is going to be 4,000 minimum for a dedicated device. And that sounds very daunting, right? Sounds very intimidating, but it makes sense. It makes sense. And I think I'm going to convince you. So what if we decided for our kids without disabilities that we were going to restrict words on their words that we use every day? Because we learn language by being surrounded by it, right? But what if we didn't surround someone with language? What if we only showed them the words that they were ready for? And we took out all the other language that they weren't ready for. So what I have for you here, and you could play along in the chat, I took a story that we typically read all our students, and I took out only the words, I left only the words that were grade or age appropriate. So type in yes if you get the story at some point, like I know what it is, Justin, because I'm curious. So the first grade is a popular story, and this is for a preschooler. All right. So what I did, preschool, that's not a preschool Dolch word, right? The only word in this sentence so far is a, right? So we're going to restrict all these words they're not ready for in preschool. We're just going to give them a. Next is kindergarten. Now, kindergarten is a compound German word. That's why it's blank up here. But they'll learn the in kindergarten. They'll learn the word not. They'll learn the word a. Now, by the time they get to first grade, we can say more words around our kids. We can model more. So here's first grade. The, before, when all, not, a, was. And let's say, when they get to second grade, it starts to make sense. So several years later, we can actually read "'Twas the night before Christmas" went all through the house. So we don't limit the language we expose kids to who are typical communicators. Why in the world would we do that to kids that are limited verbal or nonverbal? Why will we not model a whole bunch of vocabulary on their device? If not, it may take them 84 years to learn how to use it. So again, everyone needs the least restrictive access to see, hear, and speak in order to learn language. Now, you could hide some things. Sometimes kids may have trouble tracking, right? So you may hide a few things just to make sure they could find the words that you're targeting. So let's say you're going to be working on the word you and want. Well, if it's a high-tech device, you can black out some areas around it so they could find it, right? So they're having trouble finding the words that you're looking for, then you can start limiting it and then building back up. But if it's a full page and they could find the words that you're teaching, maybe the core word of the week, like we'll talk about, it's going to be want or not. If they could find those on that 64-page grid, leave it, because there's going to be so many opportunities for the communication partners to introduce new words on that device and to have a conversation. And you can use other devices that aren't high tech to kind of build up vocabulary. This was a very, oh my Lord, that's so loud. One of our more popular core boards right here. You'll see, I'll fast forward through it, but we have different cards. So you can pull out a card, and the one below it, it's going to have about like 3 more locations with a few more words. So the word below that, it's going to have a few more vocabulary words. And you can build into more and more core vocabulary. That's a possibility. So you can still do it low tech, have opportunity to build up to the more vocabulary very, very fast once they get used to finding the words you're teaching. You have mid-tech talkers that have multiple layers that you could do similar things with. Though I do want to give you a kind of a story here, because we want to promote spontaneous novel utterances. We want them to talk about things that may not be there immediately. And I have a story for you, and I'll try to make it brief. There was a school that they didn't really use dynamic devices. They didn't use devices that allow vocabulary. They just used core boards, which is a good start, but not necessarily long term. And there was this one student, I'll just call him Johnny. He was using 2 to 3 word phrases within an hour using this core board. So he was like, I or my turn, look, I'm going to go. He was telling us a whole lot of stuff, right? About a week later, though, they noticed he only started using maybe 1 word. He wasn't doing 2 to 3 word phrases. And then by the 3rd week, they asked me to come and help because he seemed to regress and be very, very frustrated. And long story short, the end of the day, we're at this bus stop, and he was waiting there, and he was really upset. And people were trying to model, like, you need help, what's wrong on the core board, limited vocabulary. And he would just point to stop, and he would say, help he instead of help me. We had no idea what he was talking about. And eventually he just threw his board down and got on the bus. So everybody called the parent and let them know the kid was caught upset. And she told an interesting story. She said that about 2 days before, she noticed he was getting upset. And one particular instance, she asked if he saw his brother's inhaler, and he kept saying, I get it. I get it. And she's like, okay, you're going to get his inhaler. Where is it? It was very confusing, but that gave us the idea. At this one instance of this bus stop, was he trying to tell us it was at school? And we searched his classroom, we didn't find it. And then we had the idea to search his classroom before that day. So he had a B day and an A day, went to the A day classroom, he had an inhaler in there. He was trying to tell us at the spur of the moment when he got on that bus, hey, I left my brother's inhaler in a classroom that I haven't been to in over a day. How can he tell us these things with just the low-tech core board? You can't. Eventually, they got him a device as soon as they could, and he was spontaneously saying things they didn't expect. Like he came to school one Monday, and the first thing he did was just talk about his weekend. He went fishing with his dad, and he was very excited about it. He had a lot of opportunities just to spontaneously tell him things without us, leading him in a direction, without just talking things in front of him. So keep that in mind. And if you take one thing today away, take this. There's really two approaches to getting kids to use AAC for AAC to be implemented. There's the team members that want the child to speak, and usually those don't work out very well. But there's those people on the team that want to hear what that child has to say, and that makes the difference. That's a totally different approach. And when we get into modeling next, think about that. We just wanted the child to say this, or are we trying to show them that, hey, if you want to say something, we want to hear it. And this is how you can tell us so we can hear it. That approach makes a profound difference. And I don't want to hate on low tech. Sometimes you need to use some low tech. Sometimes you need to use mid tech. And other times you may just have to use it because that kid has other difficulties, right? That kid may have some other things going on with vision or with hearing, or they may have some physical issues. But, if they can't use a dynamic device with a lot of vocabulary, you at least have to plan on using multiple devices sometimes. Maybe you have an eye gaze, maybe you have a low tech partner assisted scanning, maybe you also use some type of choice board. You'll have to look at having multiple things if you don't have a dynamic display device, right? And just to briefly let you know, there is a low-tech way, the only one in the world, to have a dynamic low-tech device. Even beyond that of a core board is Pod. And I can't go into Pod too much because we don't have time for all that, all right? But it's very, very amazing. It's built like a paper version of an app. And it's very, very effective. It's very big in Australia. So I have two links for you. If you want to learn more about Pod, you click the first link. If you want to see Pod in action, there's an excellent channel. Everyone's speaking Australian, not Australian. Everyone's speaking with Australian accent because that's where it's really big. So if you go to We Speak Todd YouTube channel, you'll see a speech pathologist, and you'll definitely see a mom that adopts a lot of kids with special needs, and they're all speaking using Pod. Really good examples there. So if paper is the long-term solution, this is a good one. Now, another thing you have to be preemptive for is what symbol set are you going to use? It's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. You copy what everyone else is doing in that district and in that classroom. You do what they do. Because in the long run, and I believe Katie alluded to this with her fancy picture, you can't expect people to learn multiple languages. It's hard enough for adults to learn a second language. It takes several hours a day of practice to learn a second language as an adult because there's different expectations for us. We're not taking that weekly vocabulary quiz, and there's that time. It's an issue too. They may not have a ton of time to learn to LAMP, Parallel Quota Go, Snap Core Plus, Speak for Yourself, just a few of many. So you want to make sure that you're being realistic, and if you can use the same symbol set that's very popular within that district that other people are trained on, go for it, because that may make a huge difference. Now, sometimes you will have to use a different symbol set, but try to stick to one if you can. If it's a toss-up between two things, and that kid can still say what he wants to say using this symbol set versus this symbol set, and the other is used in that district or that ELA, go for it. Now we're talking about aided language simulation. Again, kids learn basic language skills just by observing the environment and seeing people converse in different situations. We see people just talk about things they need, things they want. We see people request information. We see people say hello and greet each other. You know, we have to do these types of things with a device for kids at the very basic level. So just using the device may just look like playing at first with a young child. And I'll show a quick clip right here of a very early communicator.
Sticks, sure. Twinkle, push.
Oops, let's go back. Let's hit play.
You want to push the sticks?
Go grab their hands.
Sticks, sure. Twinkle, push. You want your push toy or you want sticks? Oh, you want that stick? Sticks. I want to play my sticks too. Trade. Trade. We're playing the sticks.
And that's the type of modeling. They just sit there and play. Little expectation of that child at the very beginning to communicate back. But you see that after a while, he starts to get curious about it. He's like, what's this device?
My turn. Sticks? That's right. We are playing the sticks.
And this wasn't their first session. You could be sitting there just playing games and modeling for a few days sometimes before they really get interested to communicate back. They have to observe that. Every time you push sticks, you got a stick. And it became normal. And he started to explore. And just to emphasize, it takes so much modeling before you can really expect them to communicate those vocabulary words back to you. So right here, this kid was 5 years old at the time. And at the very beginning, for a whole hour and 30 minutes.
Blue helicopter.
They're in an art activity for about an hour and 30 minutes. All they do is model. They never once ask that child a question.
All right.
But they're introducing new words that he hasn't learned yet. They're talking turn, they're saying pull, they're pressing down to glue helicopters.
It's art.
That's right.
Time for
And like I said, this goes on and on. But there is a time when they could ask him a question, get him excited. You know, he wouldn't press
Tell me.
the art button, right? When he would be prompted to. Why would he care, right? But they've modeled these words so many times that eventually he may do that. They've done that before with Go. So here he actually has a motivating activity. This is where you can reciprocate, get them to reciprocate. So right here, if he pressed Go, he knew
Set, go.
he gets to go.
Ready, set. That was fast. He was ready. He was ready. Ready, set. And he gave me a verbal, and if y'all weren't here, AAC, I would take him the verbal and went, oh, yeah. And went with
That's adapted PE too, by the way. So in the classroom, they've modeled and modeled and modeled. And, you know, in these smaller sessions at first is when you can actually put them on a spot to say go, to say more, right? And he's got so many words being introduced earlier in the day. And eventually, after those get introduced more and more, you can start putting them into activities and see if he's going to reciprocate. And of course, he's going to press go to go, right? So if you're adaptive PE, you have lots of really fun opportunities to have the kids communicate with you, to hear what they have to say. And this kid just has a blast. A few times he actually speaks, and that's one of the videos I really like to show. Because also promotes that speech. He wasn't saying up, but eventually he said up when he jumped up on the platform before he swung. Another thing to really emphasize those natural consequences. Let's see.
Maybe just a lot.
This is just a small activity.
One more.
Turn.
They're just putting together a puzzle.
Toy.
In ABA, they've been teaching that word.
So now
You
he's doing
remember?
that. Look, this is a puzzle.
Puzzle.
Puzzle. Puzzle.
And this is one interesting thing. Really reminds you of natural consequences are important. He keeps saying toy. He's kind of fixated on this word, right? And what they want to do is teach him to say puzzle. So
So he knows his meaning.
More puzzle?
every time he says puzzle,
Puzzle.
they're going to hand him a toy.
Puzzle! You were
Promote
saying it! I heard you! Puzzle! But now you're stealing the pieces.
See right here,
Toy.
he said toy on that device again.
Turn. Toy.
Oh,
Here you go.
So toy.
That's toy.
that's when he got to the natural consequence right there. So to show him that you recognize what he's saying, even though it's incorrect, they started giving him that toy. So every time he said toy instead of puzzle, they handed him a toy. And it didn't take long for him to eventually see with that natural consequence in the environment that, hey, that toy's not what I want. I'm trying to say puzzle. And you saw by just modeling it, he actually started speaking the word puzzle, right? Fantastic. And let's move on because we don't have much time. Even more advanced, I have a little clip here from Gail Van Tatenhove. And this was very interesting. And she just kind of opened up an opportunity for the kid to ask what's in the package. So she shows up.
No, you don't know what I brought.
What did you bring?
So right here, during a session, because a lot of times in a classroom, you'll just be modeling, but here in the session, she brought something and she didn't tell them what it was, right? So the idea is, hey, I want to teach this person how to say, hey, what you got there? What's in that container?
Together we asked,
What did you bring?
And right here, this is another important thing, definitely for kids that have some physical impairments. We want them to ask for help when they need it, and they would need help asking for that that container that she brought.
you know what? That could take a while, and I respect that you're trying to do that. But we know that sometimes it is okay to ask somebody to help you.
Help me. Help me. Look.
And if we have the time, I'd love to watch the whole video, but it really shows you that you can set up these situations where they're going to want to request something of interest. They're going to want to need to ask to help, and that's perfectly time for you to model it. Now, there's a few things to think about when you're using the devices and you're trying to get communication partners to use the device correctly with the kids. And a lot of times that's avoiding too many questions. A lot of times when a kid gets a device, everyone wants to ask him 1,000 questions. And in every single video you just saw, that didn't occur. People weren't just saying, hey, how do you feel? What do you like? You don't want to bombard them. You just want to model. And avoid obvious questions. Sometimes you'll even ask questions just to see them use the device. You may ask them something like, do you like this? Do you like beans? Like, of course I like beans. I eat it all the time. So that's kind of stuff you want to avoid. And you notice in the videos, there was a lot of wait time if they asked a kid to reciprocate. And this is kind of the order you go about. This is a great prompting hierarchy. So if you're going to put the kid on the spot and not just model vocabulary, but you want to see if they're going to model back to you. This is kind of the hierarchy of least to most restrictive prompting. The first, you may give that child a wait period. You just kind of pause in silence for up to 20 seconds, and 20 seconds is quite a long time. I'll pause for 20 seconds right now. I bet I won't make it. It's been 3 seconds. Oh, I'm still waiting. Because a lot of these kids aren't used to turn taking. Oh, we ain't even on 20 seconds yet. Jeez. They're used to people sometimes just doing things for them. So that wait time is very, very important. Next, maybe just shifting your body language a little bit, letting them know, hey, it's your turn to do something. You may say, what should we do next? Were you trying to tell me something? To requesting a response. That's when you say, were you trying to tell me you want something? You may even hover your finger above the area that they may be pressing. All the way to direct modeling and physical assistance. Physical assistance, really, the best practice is showing the only time you really should grab the kid's arm, maybe just to place it over the iPad, just to or the device, just to let them know it's there. Taking a person's hand and pointing to a picture doesn't really do anything. It doesn't create a motor plan. So usually go from 1 to 7. And a really good example, if you want to show people wait time, gesturing above the device.
So they're
this is a
building
great
puzzle.
This one? Let's see.
They're just watching SpongeBob. Because it's going to have to be something fun if you're going to get them to reciprocate a response.
Did you see it?
Did you see that?
Yeah.
Do you want to show us what you're trying to do?
He made a puzzle of the door, I guess, huh?
What is it you're trying to do?
Oh, you're thinking about something.
See, she's pausing the screen right now to give him that wait time, right? He wants to say something. So she's going to make that wait time so he can contextualize.
Maybe something over here.
Oh, and gesture to the device, reminded him, hey, you got a device right here. And she kind of knew what he was talking about. She even kind of hovered at the exact point of the device where he's probably going to want to say something that he wants to say.
Here?
I want something new.
All right. I'll get it for you. Let's see here. I could pick it or you could pick it. What do you think?
Let me pick a show.
Okay. There you go. See what you get? You never know, huh? All right, let's see.
Come on in. I'm so glad you're here. Trying to do this puzzle. It's a really big puzzle.
Hey!
A lot of pieces. I can't wait to show it to you. Come on.
Wait, what's happening?
Didn't we just see this one? Nicholas. Didn't we just see that?
Yes.
I know, that's what I was thinking.
And she'd actually set him up there. That's the really pro move, to play something he's already seen before. Sabotage the environment. So then he has a way to say, hey, wait a minute, something's wrong, right? To introduce those more complex ways of communicating. So your communication partners, they got to learn the system. They need to work on that turn taking, that wait time between communication. Showing videos of this really, really helps their communication partners. Show how they respond to all those attempts. And I have a very good little thing down here called the do's and don'ts. So if you want to share something quick with a video that you're overviewing with people, have them sit down, watch an AAC video you found on YouTube about modeling, or you see a session, and have them think about what are the do's that this person did and what are the don'ts. The person with the working with a kid with the AAC device didn't do all the talking, right? They gave a lot of wait time. They aimed high. They didn't ask questions that had prerequisite skills. They may have used some words that kid hasn't seen before, but they didn't require that kid to respond back with those words. So watching these types of videos and having like a do's and don'ts, and this one's from Assistiveware, can have a very profound impact with training some members of your team, or just for you to remind yourself of, hey, I need to keep in mind this stuff when I'm using the AAC device with the child. And, sometimes if you ask too many questions and you do a lot of those don'ts, the kids get very frustrated. If you ask them those questions over and over again, if you don't give them enough wait time, a lot of kids melt down and they get mad at the device. So you want to make sure you prevent meltdowns because the device is being modeled inappropriately. And sometimes you want to make sure the words are being modeled very well, because maybe the kid won't just get mad at the device, but they won't understand the meaning of the words. If you tell them to find the vocabulary, like find square on your device, if you just say, find the word more, then they get multiple choice-itis. You tell them to ask them a question and they'll go through and they'll press every button and look at you till they see your facial expression to realize they picked the right choice, right? So you got to remind the communication partners that we're modeling the meaning of these words, right? We're not just having the kid hunt and find them. And that's what's demonstrated during some of the videos we just saw. And just to remind everybody, we always stay a step above the kid when we're modeling. So if the kid isn't really using the device yet, we can model one word. If that kid's using one word, then we model 2 words. If that kid can say want more, then you know what? Gosh darn it, we're going to start saying I want more, you want more, he wants more. And if they get to 3 word phrases, then we can start modeling maybe sentences. And you'll notice sometimes they would model words and not say all of it. So in the 1 word phrase, you may just model the word more on the device. Hey, I want more grapes, and not type in the words I want, but you said more when you press more. So you don't have to do a one-on-one correspondence with everything you say. Just stay one level above the kid's ability so they can see where they need to go next. And we're short on time. I knew we would be at this point. It's also great to engineer the environment, make AAC normal within a classroom, within a home. Instead of it's just being this one thing I do sometimes when I want something, it's everywhere. And I have some nice templates for you as well to help AACify your room. And what's really great, if having AAC everywhere, having extra talkers in the classroom even, gets peers involved. I tell you, if you have that kid's friends, that desk partner using that device or a device next to his device to communicate, it's 100 times more likely to sink in. Kids are very, very receptive when their peers are using AAC with them. And often kids are very interested in it and they want to do it anyway. And for some older kids, sometimes if you have a very handsome man or a pretty girl use a device with he or she, they're very interested. I had this one young man. He wasn't too interested in his device, but with one particular girl came up and talked with him on the device, he was very interested in communicating with her. So keep that in mind. Also, if you feel overwhelmed with everything we just saw, some very complex modeling, you can start with some light scripting. There's scripts out there for top things to say at home. You may be telling kids to put on their clothes all the time. That's something you can model with a device. You may tell them to go play. You may need to tell them to get down off something if they're climbing. There's scripts for home as well. For school as well, to play at recess, for circle time. There's more advanced things that I'm about to show you that includes basic scripting to kind of help you get started, but also to encourage choice making and describe pictures and objects. And I'll show you very quickly within my limited amount of time. Here is from Assistiveware Core Word Classroom. Fantastic place. You should sign up, but they'll give you core words of the week to get started. So if you need something simple, right here, a core word of the week, I clicked want. I can click the planner. And here are different scenarios and ways I can use the word want for that week. I know a lot of agencies will send this out district wide every Monday. There's a new core word of the week for everyone to work on. Sometimes a speech pathologist will send this to her team every Monday. And everyone sees different ways and video examples of how they can use the word want that week. A very fantastic tool. There's also core word lesson planners from the classroom. So if you want to see how core words can fit within circle time, within life skills, within literacy and language, Assistive Wear Core Classroom can help you very much right there. There's also, and I'll end within about a minute, activity examples. So right here is from the Center for AAC and Autism. And they'll give you a core word and they'll give you activities that will go with them. So right here is swinging. Well, here's a one-word phrase for swinging. It's about to load, and then it'll give you 2-word phrase examples that you may use during a swinging activity, and 3 words up and phrases. And this just goes on for 31 pages. A fantastic resource. There's also examples I have for you of kind of making an implementation plan. People have to sit down together and say, hey, is that device coming home from school? We got to make a plan to make sure it's charged. Do we need to charge it in the middle of the day? If we're sending a paper copy home, you know, where's the device going to end at the end of the day? Who's going to pick it up? Who's going to be responsible for it? And for the remainder of the session, I'll briefly show you what's up. Make sure you have low-tech backups if there's a high-tech device. And what I have for you here, if they have an iPad, here's an example of how to restrict it. You want to make sure that iPad doesn't become a toy where they get on there and download Candy Crush. You need to restrict your devices, right? Also have for you some additional settings. You know, if you need a hold duration, a whole lot of things come into it. And finally, also have a Symbaloo collection of resources embedded within my presentation. So you can see basic introduction to AAC. You can see core vocabulary. You can have resources on planning, on making goals. And right here, I'm going to end and take questions.
So we'll give attendees a few moments if they want to type their question out in the Q&A tool on Zoom webinar. That would be helpful. If there are no questions, the session code for this AAC implementation is 2004. Maybe you've heard me say this before, but for those of you who are just joining us, when you exit the webinar, you must exit the webinar in order to take the evaluation. The evaluation is going to ask for the session code, which is 2004. Some common issues that we have noticed with people this morning. So take a moment and make sure that you type your email address correctly, because if you don't put the correct email in your evaluation, you're not going to get your certificate. And then also make sure that you select the right session. So this particular session is AAC implementation. Several people evaluated this particular session earlier before the session had even started. So that tells us that they selected the wrong session from the drop-down menu. And I believe we'll be emailing all of those folks.
Well, if no one has any questions, I would like to just emphasize some of the bottom links of extra resources I had. If you wanted to know how to monitor AAC short-term and long-term to see if it's working, or maybe to assess for it before implementation begins, we have an entire presentation and video on that topic toward the end of the slide deck. Oh, thank you so much.
So we can go ahead and